Ubisoft games suck. At least that's what the internet told me. When I heard that Assassin's Creed Shadows was coming out in March, I had a mild panic attack because I realized that I was behind. I love Assassin's Creed games and I've played every major installment since AC3, but I hadn't played Mirage yet. Ubisoft has been losing its way for the last few years. Okay, maybe more than a few years, but you know what I mean. And while I enjoyed Origins and Odyssey, Valhalla really missed the mark for me, and of course, nothing beats the GOAT. I had heard this one was a bit of a reversion back to the mean, so I jumped into Mirage with all the optimism of this guy asking Elon Musk to be president of Tesla.
I would like to come on board as vice chairman of Tesla. No.
And I found that Assassin's Creed Mirage is not very good. Hear me out, but first help me fight off these Templars by subscribing to the channel. We are so close to being monetized, I just need a few more of you guys on board, and we'll be there. Many thanks, and let me know what your favorite Assassin's Creed game is down in the comments. This game follows Basim through 9th century Baghdad, where he goes from street thief to ultimate assassin and fights the Order of the Ancients, because, well, it's an Assassin's Creed game, and that's what you do in all of the Assassin's Creed games. If you're unfamiliar with this era, as Europe waded its way through feudalism and the Dark Ages, the power vacuum left by the fall of Rome opened up a stage for a new world leader. Luckily for Baghdad, DEI had just been invented and they were selected as the next economic hub. Just kidding. But they really were the center of the economic and scientific world at this time, and there were many, many, many innovations that came from the Islamic Golden Age between the 8th and 13th centuries. Seriously, it's worth a Google. There's a ton of stuff that happened during this time. It was, and still is, located smack in the middle of the Silk Road that exchanged goods from Europe in the west all the way to China in the east. This meant that it was not only a huge trading post, but it also saw influences and travelers from all across the globe. Well, except the Americas, because they were still busy being undiscovered. Sounds like a pretty awesome setting for a game, right? Well, yes and no. Let's start with the history. This has been a staple for Assassin's Creed games right from the beginning, and honestly, I think it's pretty awesome. The presentation has changed over the years, though. In early games, you'd get a little blurb that popped up when you found a location that was based on something in real life, and in Origins, they stepped it up by offering the Discovery Tour, where you would go on guided tours throughout the game world and listen to presentations both about the history and how it was integrated into the game. It was actually awesome. I loved it. Then in Odyssey and Valhalla, they turned the Discovery Tour into a DLC and tried to charge $20 for it.
It is utterly foolish. But it seems I cannot stop you.
That's BS. Scummy, penny-pinching, short-sighted, shareholder-appeasing BS. Ubisoft, the history is half the reason people buy your games, you greedy, soul-sucking opportunists. Hiding it in a DLC that costs as much as an indie game is just straight-up disrespectful. It's like ordering a Happy Meal and finding out the toy costs $20. That's the whole reason I got it. Thankfully, Mirage goes back to basics, and we get something closer to what we saw in the early games. The history blurbs are once again collectibles that you can find throughout the world, and each one gives you some info as well as a photo of a real-life artifact from the time period. It's not as good as the Discovery Tour in my opinion, but hey, at least they put it in the game this time. God, what a sad time we live in when I have to give companies props for actually including the content in their game. Anyways, while the history of this time period is fascinating, the bad part about this particular setting is, well, it's the setting. The area in and around Baghdad, both in the game and in real life, is not particularly scenic. It's very flat, kinda dusty, and it's a desert. I was really hoping they would lean into this and make some massive sand dunes and hide some cool outposts, or turn the Tigris River into a place where you could sail around and either fight other boats or just trade goods between outposts, but no. The dunes are like 10 feet high, and the Tigris is just a barrier for the edge of the world. They added canals through the city so you can paddle around, but honestly it just feels like a huge wasted opportunity. Architecture is also a bit of a weak point, and Valhalla had this problem too. Ancient Greece and Egypt are both known for humongous structures like the Great Pyramids, the Lighthouse of Alexandria, Parthenon, and others. But how many buildings do you know in Baghdad? Probably none. I don't know any, and I played the game. In fact, I looked it up because I was curious how the real thing stacked up to the virtual world, and it turns out the oldest building in Baghdad right now is the Abbasid Palace, which dates from about 300 years after the events in Assassin's Creed. There are still some big palaces and compounds in the game, but it's not quite the same knowing that it's all just invented for the game. None of it's really based on anything real, other than just descriptions that they've found in historical documents. Okay, so that's a bit of a dud. Maybe it makes up for it in other areas. Again, this is a yes and no answer. From a technical perspective, there's nothing really good here. But from an experience perspective, it has its merits. Let's look at the technicals first. No spoilers, but the story basically doesn't exist for the first 95% of the game. You get some random flashbacks of this weird creepy crawly guy, and the rest is just a montage of, look, here's a bad man. He's corrupt. Kill him. Rinse and repeat. They give you this big mind map of death, just like the previous games, but there's really no substance here. The other games did a much better job of drip feeding you bits of lore to keep you going, but here it feels kind of mindless. Then once you've killed all the baddies, at the very end, you get a whole bunch of plot points that just smack you in the face. It's a good smack. Nice and firm, just like Daddy likes it.
When you say it like that, it only excites me further.
But even then, it's fraught with problems. Mainly that it requires you to have a vivid memory of what happened in Valhalla. If you're like me and you have the memory of a land cucumber, the ending just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I had to look it up. Once I did, I was impressed. It's actually some pretty good writing, but I shouldn't be dumbfounded by the only plot point in the game. Thumbs down. Another thumbs down is the voice acting for everything except the main story cutscenes. Here, see for yourself.
I should not speak about it. I do not know much, really.
Whatever you know can help me.
Well, it will not hurt to tell you what I know.
Yeah, the whole game is like that. It's atrocious. The main story cutscenes are better, but those are few and far between. For everything else, it's like everything was done in one take and they didn't bother recording conversations in order. They just get the actor in there, have them record all their lines in isolation in one go, and then cut everything together. There's no way for two people to play off of each other and actually, talk to each other, right? They're just cutting together random sentences. Some of them are so bad, I honestly think they just got Pam from accounting to come in and record a few lines. This is not okay coming from the quadruple A studio.
Now, about this treasure.
Treasure? There is none.
Game progression is also sorely lacking. The outfits each have a different perk, but there's no defense stat attached to them, and the perks are not particularly mind-blowing. You get 2 weapons, a sword and a dagger. There's a variety of each one of them to choose from, but they're all just kind of slight variations on the same stats, and again have mild perks associated with them. You can honestly play this whole game with the starting set of weapons and armor, and you would be just fine as long as you upgrade them, which is super easy to do, and you only have to do it twice. You don't even have to think about it really, like picking out a baby at the hospital. Just pick the one you think looks the coolest and take it with you. The skill tree and tool selection are a little bit more involved. You get 6 tools, a torch, throwing knives, smoke bomb, trap, blow darts, and a noisemaker, each with 3 levels of perks to improve them. And the skill tree looks like this. Nothing here is particularly revolutionary, but at least it gives you some options and some things to play with, which is nice. So what are the good things then? Well, even though this 30-hour experience is full of stuff that is objectively crap, I did enjoy it actually. It's fun, which is the most important aspect of a video game, right? The city is big enough and varied enough that it's still fun to explore. The stealth aspect of this game is pretty good, honestly, and assassinations are pretty satisfying. I had a great time infiltrating compounds, finding treasure chests, and just generally slaughtering everything that moves.
We will need to make this quick.
Alright, final thoughts on Assassin's Creed Mirage. This game feels like a stopgap. Feels like some guy in a suit told the devs to have a game out this year so he could check off his I did a thing box on his yearly check sheet. Overall, it feels lazy and uninspired. It reeks of a team that is out of ideas and is just phoning it in until they inevitably get laid off. It's the Marvel movies post-Endgame. But the thing is, lots of people still go see those movies because they just like Marvel, and that's okay. If you love Assassin's Creed and you just want to play another one, this is definitely another one. And if you want a game that you don't have to think too hard about, that you can just throw on after a hard day of work and melt into the couch with, this is the game for you. Mirage.